Hey, welcome to another episode. We are back. Special episode. This is going to be a bit of a different episode. We're going to do a bit of a sports spotlight on one of my favorite sports, Jiu-Jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu.
So Jiu-Jitsu is like probably one of the fastest growing sports in the world at the moment, especially in Australia. And to the people involved in Jiu-Jitsu, it's more than just a sport. It can be like a therapy session. It can be an intense workout, a way to get your aggression out. But it's also proven time and time again to be probably the most effective martial art. So today we're going to do a bit of a spotlight, bit of a deep dive into Jiu-Jitsu and have a look sort of how it started and get some insights from
a very special guest.
Well respected in the Australian Jiu-Jitsu community. Grant Bradshaw is actually a Royce Gracie and Luke Beston black belt. Owns and runs his own Jiu Jitsu Academy, Iconic Jiu-Jitsu. Awesome place to train for anyone up on the Central Coast.
That's where Ross trains.
The Academy is actually part of the Royce Gracie network.
By extension, yeah.
By extension. And Grant has trained with some of the best grapplers in both MMA and Jiu-Jitsu in the world. Learnt from some of the best. Also a competitor. Also an MC at some jiu-jitsu events like Subversion and Valor.
Yeah, so Valor Fight down in Tasmania was fantastic. We ran that for a few years. Good story to start off there. So, you know, MMA in its fledgling days in Australia.
Just come a little bit close to the mic so we can hear. Yep.
So MMA in its fledgling days in Australia, I don't think I've told you this story. We're down in Tasmania. It's Valor 2. The first one was a success. They've organised this outdoor venue. It was beautiful. It was in Tasmania. It was at Harley Davidson outlet.
Yeah.
We get down there at the morning, 6 a.m. I think it's August.
Tasmania.
Freezing in Tasmania. They hadn't told us it was going to be outside. And this is because 2 or 3 days before, all the venues had fallen through. And we get there and we're like, okay, where are we setting up? We've driven down the road. They're like, right here. Yeah, but we're on the road. Yeah, that's where we're doing it. So we actually set up a cage on a road, on a cul-de-sac, in front of a Harley dealership.
Did you have to close the road down or anything?
You would think so.
What?
No. Okay, move the cage, car.
Yeah.
It's like that
It's
old episode of Wayne's World where they're playing hockey. Yeah.
But it seems that when you get a couple of thousand MMA fans in Tasmania in front of a Harley dealership, they don't worry about closing the road down because no one dares drive down there anyway.
No.
But by the end of it, because it was so cold and a lot of dew and that kind of thing, in between rounds, I think I was emceeing that show maybe. The promoters were jumping in there. Everyone was jumping in there. The cage itself was like an ice skating rink. So it was just in between every 5 minutes, we'd all jump in there. We'd towel off the mats, all that kind of stuff. Just when you're thinking what else could go wrong, off comes the cage door.
Oh, no.
So the guy's gone for a massive double leg takedown, just hit the wrong part of the cage, hit the door, right in the sweet spot on that hinge, down she comes. So that was the early days of MMA in Australia.
Yeah, good way to start.
Humble beginnings, yeah.
Yeah. So probably, we're probably talking to a few people out here that don't actually know what Jiu-Jitsu is. And anytime I tell someone that I do Jiu-Jitsu, it's like instantly the hands come up. It's like, oh, yeah, like it's some karate stance, which drives me crazy. I want to choke them on the spot. But we should probably kick off by telling people, what is Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah,
What is Jiu-Jitsu?
So it's aggressive cuddling, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what we do most nights.
Folding laundry with people still in the clothes.
That's right, or involuntary yoga. So there are a few different ways of doing it. And one of the things that when I very first saw Jiu-Jitsu, the idea was to be able to control someone else without actually hurting them. And a big part of Jiu-Jitsu is submissions and the like. And a great way that we talk about it when we're training is the uncle theory. So you're at a party with... everyone's got that uncle when they're at a Christmas party and he has a bit too much to drink and someone needs to shut him down. Yeah. Now, if you're a Muay Thai fighter, fantastic, that's great.
I've been at this party. Yeah.
Are you the uncle?
Yes.
Right.
Usually, I used to be.
Kicked in the face by the Muay Thai guy.
But I mean, your Muay Thai fighter can't just go and shin kick Uncle Gary to the head. It's not going to end well for anyone.
It depends how much Uncle Gary's being a dickhead.
Well, that's exactly right. But with Jiu-Jitsu, you can calm Uncle Gary down. You can control him. You can get him to the ground. You can, if you need to put him to sleep, you can. But without doing any
Is this an actual real life story? This sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar, but it wasn't me.
No, it might have been your wife.
It might might have been. So,
And Uncle Gary won't be listening to this podcast. So.
Uncle Gary won't be listening to this podcast. And Uncle Gary was about 140 kilos of Taekwondo black belt and ex-Special Forces, etc. Grant's wife, not 140 kilos, not ex-black belt, definitely not Special Forces. And he had a bit too much to drink and took a couple of liberties he shouldn't have. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit back and watch, and while everyone else was saying, Grant, why don't you get in there? Why don't you help your wife? I'm sitting back, hands on my head, feet up. I'm she's all right.
She got this.
All right. Next thing, he was crying.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
Wow.
And that's jiu-jitsu. It's basically a martial art that has been designed to help a smaller opponent deal with a larger opponent, right?
That's exactly right. And it's all about being efficient and using leverage and technique. And that's basically the nuts and bolts of it.
How's it different to all the other martial arts? Like what is different about jiu-jitsu that makes it special?
I think the biggest thing is the live training. There can't be any bullshit. Like, with all respect to every other martial art out there, I've got so much respect for anyone who takes up a martial art, the amount of discipline it shows, the mental discipline, the physical discipline. With jiu-jitsu in particular, most nights you're going to live spar. We call it rolling. And you're going to be wrestling people, and your techniques have got to work. If they're not working, you're going to wind up being submitted. So I think the biggest advantage isn't so much the art itself, although I very much believe in the techniques. I think it's the training methodology that we use and the fact that we are actually live sparring pretty much every time we roll. You couldn't do that with boxing, with Muay Thai.
You can't just get hit in the head all the time, With jiu-jitsu, you guys are going hard, and you can't go hard in a lot of striking spots.
That's exactly
safely.
right, because they're all about that force generation. And if you generate that so much force all of the time, someone's going to wind up, seriously hurt.
It's probably the only martial art where you can live spar at 100%. Not that everyone live spars at 100% all the time, but at 100%.
Judo, you can go pretty hard.
You can, but that is taxing. You go 100% in judo, getting sort of slammed, getting thrown night after night. Eventually your body just will break down. We've got a few judo guys that train at our academy, and they're definitely a little bit more broken down, but they're a little bit older as well, and they're it is different to many martial arts, and it's primarily focused on the ground, but there is a whole curriculum of self-defense techniques that teaches you how to deal with an attacker in a street situation. And this has caused a little bit of it's not controversy, but a bit of a split in jiu-jitsu. Over the years, jiu-jitsu has evolved from being sort of purely self-defense, dealing with an attacker, and then as it's evolved over the years, it's become more sport-based. So you've got your sport-based guys, and then you've got your traditional sort of self-defense guys. You sit somewhere in the middle.
I do, right on that fence.
But talk about that as far as a self-defense perspective. Like it's definitely effective for self-defense.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it's a really good point you raised, because there's a bunch of different ways to look at that issue. There is a bit of a schism at the moment between the competitors and the traditional self-defense. And there's a few different ways to look at it. A lot of the competitors will say, well, we're fit, we're athletes, and because of that, we don't need to know the self-defense curriculum because we're that fit and that trained. Yeah, so's your average NRL footballer, so's your average soccer player even, When they're relying on fitness, that's one thing, and that's very good and that's very true. But most people, when they first get involved in any martial art, be it karate, taekwondo, kung fu, whatever it is, they don't walk in because they want to get a little plastic medal for that sport.
Yeah.
They walk in because they want to learn to defend themselves, or they want that sense of camaraderie of part of a martial arts school, or they walk in because they don't want their kids to get bullied at school, and they've heard that jiu-jitsu is a really good way to do that, as we said earlier, without actually hurting the other person.
That's what I love about jiu-jitsu. That point you just made. You can subdue or attack or hold off an opponent without actually smacking them ahead or doing something that might get you into some legal trouble. And I think that's why jiu-jitsu has been so popular these days with students, with kids.
Yeah.
They're able to sort of defend or get themselves in a position where they don't actually have to hit another student and get in trouble. So, that's why it's so popular with kids.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the things that we teach, so I'm a school teacher in my other life, and one of the things we teach the kids at jiu-jitsu is that amount of control, that element of control. If you hit the other kid back, it doesn't matter what they've said to you, it doesn't matter what they've done to you, you're going to get in trouble as well. You're going to hurt that kid, There's going to be consequences down the line for you. But if you can use, we talk about verbal jiu-jitsu first. If you can use that de-escalation, talk your way out of it, maintain and create distance. And then if you need to protect yourself, you can do it in such a way that you're not going to hurt the other person too bad. Yeah,
and it is the gentle martial art, right? But, obviously it has its origins in a very savage time. It's where that's what samurais used to do, right? Many martial arts originated from samurais.
Is that why you got your samurai shirt?
I got my samurai t-shirt today because, I'm a bit of a samurai geek.
Absolutely.
Well, that's actually a good lead in. Like you hear in jiu-jitsu, you hear a lot about the Gracie family, and they basically adapted the martial art and commercialized it so that it is popular worldwide. But how did that start?
Give us a bit of a
history lesson
on the Gracies.
History 101.
Yeah.
So basically, look, it came from, as you said, you're dead right. It originated with the samurais in Japan, and there's not a lot in martial arts. There's not a lot that's truly new. Anything that you see, we could deep dive into technical positions. I could say Kiss of the Dragon, and Ross would probably be the only person who would know what that is. And Dhiren's looking at us
I'm
going,
already aroused.
I'm like, oh, you guys watched that Jet Li movie too?
It's an excellent documentary. But you could take something like that, a really new cutting-edge sport technique, and somewhere out there's a relief of some dude in ancient Greece doing it. So what the Gracies really did is they took this form of judo that was brought over to Brazil from Japan, and they adapted it. They, among others, they adapted it, and they became more about training more efficiently, as we said, about really trying to refine those techniques. But more significantly, what they did was they brought it to the masses. As you said, up until the late 80s, early 90s, jiu-jitsu really was something that, with a few rare exceptions, it existed in Brazil.
Yep.
And from there, when Dhiren brought the UFC to prominence in 1993, showcased Royce, of course, that was where jiu-jitsu really exploded, because if nothing else, what they did was they opened up to a whole generation of people. They opened it up to the Western world.
So UFC 1, just describe what went down for any non-sort of UFC fans.
Obviously, the whole thing of UFC was, what's the best martial arts? Yeah. That's why it started. So
that's exactly right. And so, look, Dhiren Gracie, he basically wanted to showcase his martial art, showcase Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and put together 8 of the biggest, baddest fighters you could find from around the world, including his brother Royce, who was not the biggest, probably one of the baddest though, and put together a tournament over one night. I know a lot of people who are watching out there are familiar with the UFC, but when you say names like Royce Gracie, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, those original guys, they're like, yeah, who's that? So the first UFC was in November 1993, and it looked nothing like it did today. These days, these guys are all fit, well-rounded, professional athletes. They're martial artists in every sense of the word. But in the past, it was about style versus style. So you had a boxer, you had a sumo wrestler.
A boxer with one glove.
Art Jimison. You had kickboxers and these guys were experts in their field. They were recently among the most elite in the world. And then they headed up to Denver, Colorado, I think it was, one night, and they had this tournament. No time limits, no rounds, very few rules, and the rules were only enforced by you shouldn't poke your opponent in the eye, but if you do, we'll keep going. He's just going to get part of your money. So they were rules, but they weren't actually enforced. The referee was under strict instruction: do not stop the fight unless someone taps out. And so when it started off, it was style against style. It was so rudimentary. It was bare knuckle. Royce came in wearing his jiu-jitsu gi. As we said, Art Jimison with one glove. No one knew what to expect. And in the very first fight, Taylor Tooley's tooth got kicked out. It landed in the third row somewhere, landed on one of the commentators. And that's basically how the UFC started. Royce took out the first 2 UFCs, and then number 4, and won the first couple without throwing a single strike.
Yeah. So over time, jiu-jitsu has proved itself in the UFC to probably be one of the best sort of martial arts bases to have. Obviously, the UFC now, you have to be well-rounded in every martial art.
It's no longer style versus style. Everybody's incorporating all the different styles.
Right. And guys like GSP, George St. Pierre, was probably one of the first guys to really come through and not be a wrestler or a karate fighter or a jiu-jitsu guy, specialist, but that well-rounded martial artist. And these days, that's what you see. You do have guys, take Damian Meyer or Rodolfo Vieira, who are elite grapplers. You have guys come in with, or Holly Holmes, probably a great example of someone who's got a fairly elite striking record. But if you're deficient in any of those areas in the cage, you're going to be found out pretty quickly.
So that's what sort of led to the worldwide phenomenon of jiu-jitsu, and it has expanded probably exponentially into Australia more recently. Where does Australia sit on the world stage at the moment when it comes to jiu-jitsu? It still feels fairly new here. To the people that have been in it a long time, like yourself and your coaches and whatever, they've been doing it forever, but the explosion has been recent.
Oh, it really has. And like you said, it's been so exponential. I think the first competition I went to in 2006, there were maybe 150 people there. And so there's a belt system in Jiu-Jitsu.
Is that including the crowd?
That the only people in the crowd were the people who were fighting.
Right.
And the family.
And maybe the occasional terrified mum.
Yeah.
So there were no kids divisions. Everyone's walking around tap-out shirts.
No crazy dads screaming at their kids from the sidelines to choke? Oh, right.
No, you weren't there.
Okay.
Rip his head off.
No, it wasn't like that.
No. But yeah, so and in those days, as we said, there was a belt system and a blue belt, which is the first time you achieve a belt. I'll hold back on all my blue belt jokes.
No. Blue belts cop a really bad rap in jiu-jitsu. It's generally the belt where most people sort of get to a certain level and then they drop out. So I think they pay out on all the blue belts to encourage them to keep coming so that they can get their next belt. But they cop it. Blue belts cop it more than white belts.
Well, we want to keep the white belts.
Well, that's true.
But yeah, so there were about 150 people there, and the whole competition would stop for a blue belt match. And now you go to even a local tournament in Sydney.
People throw stuff at the blue belt matches now, don't they?
We do. We throw everything we possibly can at the blue belt matches. Plenty of shade, that's for sure. But you'll see upwards of 1,000 competitors. A competition we were at last year down in Melbourne had, I think, 1,300 competitors. And there's legit black belts over here, guys who are on the world stage. And 5 or 6 people are watching them because little Johnny's over here competing or what have you. So it's really grown massively. When I started, there were maybe 4 or 5 schools in Sydney. I didn't start till I moved up to Central Coast, but now there's 4 or 5 schools in some suburbs.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It really is incredible how much it's
Why
grown.
did you get into jiu-jitsu? You've done a bit of other martial arts previously. Why did you get into jiu-jitsu? What was the thing that made you...
What did you do previously as well?
So I actually did a little bit of capoeira for 7 or 8 years. Yeah, I was a 115 kilo fat white boy who could backflip.
Everybody knows capoeira from Tekken and
Eddie Gordo, shout out. And Only the Strong,
Eddie
one of the
Gordo,
greatest movies ever made that no one's seen. But yeah, so I did capoeira for a number of years. I was actually really enthralled with the Brazilian culture and that kind of thing. But I did capoeira because even though I was pretty big, I wanted the flexibility and the agility.
I thought you said you want to be good at breakdancing.
Well, there's that too. And that was really cool. But when I moved up to the Central Coast, I'd always wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I think I watched that first UFC. It came out in 93. I didn't kind of catch it till 98 or so. And when I moved up the Central Coast, Luke Beston was there, who was directly under Royce Gracie, which is pretty cool. And I just didn't have any motivation to change when I was in Sydney. There was, as I said, there were very few schools. The nearest school was probably about a 45-minute drive away. I was already in capoeira. I thought, yeah, I'll get it there down the line. I wish I had have started when I first found it because it'd be amazing. But nonetheless, what do they say? The best time to start something's 10 years ago. Yeah. The second best time is now. So when I started it, it was all because of that UFC one and what I saw Royce do. So to be graded to black belt under him is actually pretty surreal.
It's weird.
And pretty rad, yeah.
Yeah. I remember meeting him when he came to our academy. That was very surreal. But for you'd met him previously. What other interactions have you had with the Gracie family? You've actually been you went over to Miami to get your black belt directly from Royce.
Yep.
And you're tightly connected through Luke and the Gracie family. So how many of them have you met? Have you trained with all of them, or?
Yeah, look, it's into double figures. It's a very big family.
Yeah.
People say the name Gracie, and it is jiu-jitsu royalty. It's martial arts royalty. There's no doubt about that. But that's across 3 and 4 generations of a family tree that's really broad. So I've been fortunate enough, and one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is, and MMA to a huge degree as well, is just how connected it still is to its grassroots.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are watching The Last Dance at the moment, watching that basketball documentary with Jordan, and I'll be going home tonight to watch it. But the idea of playing pickup basketball with Michael Jordan is just, it's unheard of.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen, you know. The idea of playing cricket with Shane Warne, it's not going to happen. You know, but now, even I know you guys work with Rob Whittaker. There's opportunities to train with him.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to, I mean, he's such a humble guy. He gets into local competitions and just goes there. And it's not, here's UFC champ Rob Whittaker. It's, here's a martial artist who's working on his craft and really, really humble. And doesn't matter if he wins or he loses, he's there getting better.
Yeah.
And so with meeting the Gracie family and a lot of the other extended jiu-jitsu legends sort of thing, the coolest part of it has been just, being able to interact with them on that one-on-one level, learning as much as you can, but then afterwards, you know, going out for dinner and having a feed or whatever it might be, to realise that, hang on, these guys are...
This guy's literally like a legend, you know?
Exactly right. And you see these people who are huge when there's a camera on or when there's a crowd, and they might actually be really shy in the background. You know, I've sat with world champions who wouldn't even look at you out of confidence or a lack thereof. You know, it certainly wasn't arrogance, but they were really quiet, shy, humble guys. But when you put them on the mats, they're world beaters.
Flip the switch, yeah. I heard Royce Gracie was, they were trying to make him fight Mike Tyson once upon a time. It's a bit of a, I don't know if it's a true story or not, but apparently...
Yeah, there were a lot of talks back in the day. So the Gracie Challenge is a bit of a thing in jiu-jitsu, or it was a bit of a thing. And basically back when Horian brought the UFC to world prominence, a lot of it was about promoting the martial art. And the Gracie Challenge was this standing idea where, okay, if you think you can beat us, come on down and try it.
Or they would just rock up on someone else's dojo and prove that they were better.
Right.
Allegedly.
Well, I heard Mike Tyson actually accepted because he was such a savage. But then the sport of boxing were like, you're going to destroy the sport if you lose because you're the baddest man on the planet right now.
So I have heard some of those rumors. I'm not sure exactly. You know, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Cool story though.
To see that. Yeah, definitely. And like a lot of sports, I shouldn't say like a lot of sports, jiu-jitsu and MMA are really new. In the grand scheme of things, you know, even though it's got its roots in the 1920s and 30s, it came to world prominence in the 90s. That's only sort of 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So these sports grew up on the internet. And I remember when I was on the Underground or Sherdog, all these forums in the late 90s, early 2000s, and everyone would be sitting there going, Mike Tyson's no chance, you know. Anyone who's done more than 3 jiu-jitsu classes is going to take him down and armbar him and rah. But as we said before,
fast forward to now, and you know Conor McGregor's fighting Mayweather.
Yeah, well, that's right. Or rewind a few years ago, and James Toney's against Randy Couture. So it's
a lot of people forget about that fight.
A lot of people probably because it went so quickly.
Very quick. Randy shot in for a low single, and it was all over from there.
But he's a smart guy. He knew that, you know, to stand and fight in front of a boxer and throw hands with them is silly. Just like going to the ground with someone who's an expert in jiu-jitsu is probably pretty silly. There are guys who try it out, and there's a lot of jiu-jitsu fighters who jump in the cage and want to prove their hands. But I kind of think, you know, stick to your strengths where you can.
One thing I love about jiu-jitsu, different to a lot of other martial arts, is it's a bloody long process to get your black belt. And there is you can't wing it to black belt. Yeah. Like you can't, I don't know.
Well, I actually did a little bit of martial arts and no martial artist, but when I was a kid, I did some karate, right?
Yeah, cool.
And they were like...
did you get
no, they were these little kids.
Did you get a stripe the first day you rocked up?
Well, they were like 10-year-olds with black belts, and I was like, what the hell these kids got black belts and stuff like already? And then later on in life, when I was in high school, I did judo. I'm like, okay, I get my black belt in a couple of years, but judo's a long process as well.
Yeah, judo's super legit.
Very similar to jiu-jitsu. But talk about it, like a bit about the belt process. Like what does each belt represent?
Yeah, so on average, it can take 10, 12 years to get your black belt. And
how often are you training per week to get to that level?
Probably 3 to 5 times a week as it averages out. I think what happens with a lot of people is when they're a white belt, they'll come once a week, maybe twice a week. Then that jumps to 7 times a week when they get the bug. Yeah. You know, then a blue belt, apparently you don't train at all.
Well, this is good. This is actually going to be my next question. It's like what goes through your head? And I've experienced my first day through to where I am now. I haven't been in the journey anywhere near as long as you, but you definitely go through a lot of mental changes, and you definitely look back at who you were in the beginning, and sometimes you can cringe. And I cringe a lot. So you actually, this is what I love about jiu-jitsu. It's not just a martial art or something to go to lose weight. Like, you're learning so much more than a martial art. You're evolving as a person. It's an ego crusher or an ego sort of leveler. But yeah, tell us a bit of where your headspace is at each belt, because I think people will find that fascinating.
Yeah, look, on my first night, I remember, and I went in there, and everyone likes to say, you know, I'm incredibly humble, I'm this and that. And like I said, I'd been watching UFC and mixed martial arts and the like well before I went into it. So I wanted to have my ass handed to me by a 70 kilo guy. I wanted to buy into this idea that, you know, I was 105 kilos at the time, pretty big guy, fairly strong, fairly athletic. I wanted to buy into this martial art where a littler guy could defeat a bigger guy. And sure enough, I was tapping within 30 seconds to something that I didn't even know what it was. So it was an omoplata. And I remember, and this is the very first time I trained 15 years ago, I remember saying to the guy, I said to him, man, like, my hand was just stuck in there and I couldn't get it out. And he's just sat there and he's going, yeah, I know.
That's the point.
He's been thinking my hand was stuck there. And he put it there.
Yeah.
You know? And then that's one of the things I really love about it is it's so indirect. It's so indirect. It's not take this arm and put it over here and do this and do that. It's almost, you guys were talking about chess last week. And you mentioned
a chess fan, finally.
Yeah, so 2,000 calories. I still don't know who the strongman Norwegian chess master is. But
Magnus Carlsen, he actually just lost since our last podcast.
I saw that,
You
yeah.
jinxed him.
He lost to a 12-year-old.
You
There you
jinxed
go.
him.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like my first jiu-jitsu lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Losing to a 12-year-old.
I know him.
Yeah.
Actually, we've gone off topic a little bit here, but there's a guy named Josh Watskin who was a chess grandmaster at quite a young age, and he's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, wow.
Trains out of Marcelo Garcia's academy and has a lot to do with that. And he takes it very much from that cerebral point of view. And a lot of people look at jiu-jitsu as a form of human chess.
Well, yeah, martial arts. I know, because of a bit of a Miyamoto Musashi fan. Like, if you study a lot of his fights, how he wins isn't necessarily because of his better skill or better, physicality. It's a lot of it is strategy. It's
strategy. That's exactly right. As we said a little bit earlier, you know, if you, sure, plenty of people can go in and win a fight or something like that based on their physical traits, based on being bigger, faster, stronger, whatever it is. I don't know. I think if you're a big guy who's going out and picking fights with smaller guys, there's a word for that. But anyway, but with jiu-jitsu, what you're doing is you're learning two things. On one hand, you're learning how to deal with that attacker in the street who is untrained. And that's where the self-defense aspect of things come in and things they're likely to do. You're learning how to read body language, how to interpret the way someone's standing or how someone's moving. Okay, this is what they may do. So here we go. I've got a reaction ready to go for that. And then you've got the sporting scene and jiu-jitsu there, which is about using your jiu-jitsu against someone else who knows jiu-jitsu. And that's where it becomes the chess match. And that's also where it becomes really interesting with the whole belt system. Yeah. Because there's some people out there who are getting... BJ Penn got his black belt in 3.5, 4 years. And there's a few guys out there, and I think that as we increase our access to world-class trainers, as the world becomes smaller, with instructionals, with the internet, with all the virtual technology that people are using these days, it's a lot easier to learn jiu-jitsu. As I said, the reason I didn't take it up earlier is because I had to drive 45 minutes to the nearest academy.
How frustrating is that, though? As a coach, you know, a white belt walks into the academy, they flop around for the first, couple of months. They're super keen. They start coming every night. They start getting really keen. They get that bug, like you say, and then they discover YouTube. And they discover all the techniques in the world.
Yep.
How do you, as a coach, sort of... We've been through this too, so I know this story well. It is, how do you sort of pull back and just say, look, one step at a time, grasshopper?
Sometimes people have to learn for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the time, experience is where people learn the most. So just like we said, the biggest strength, in my opinion, of jiu-jitsu is the fact that you're actually experiencing your live sparring. You're seeing what works, what doesn't work, what's pressure test, what doesn't. It's easy enough, and we all remember back at school. Your teacher can stand up there and say, don't do this, do that, otherwise this will happen. Yeah. But we were all teenage boys once upon a time, I'm assuming.
70 years ago for me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And people have got to learn from their own experiences. So Initially, when I first started my academy, it was frustrating. You see people who sort of show all the right signs early on. Oh, this is a really humble person here to learn, really gets the idea that it's about technique. And somewhere along the line, and it happens with a lot of sports, it happens with a lot of things, they become just enough of an expert to think that they know enough that they can go out there and learn on their own. And the reality is that it takes a lot more than that. You need to be able to, there's so many resources out there, but how do you know what's good and how do you know what's not? I mean, you guys in the area of sports nutrition and that kind of thing. You walk into a supplement shop for the first time and there's 55 brands of protein and all these thermogenics and fat burners and the like. How does that guy going to the gym for the first time know what works and what doesn't? So
we just go straight to Musashi.
I would go straight to Musashi, but they go to the flashiest
advice.
packaging.
Yeah, it's true.
And so you jump on YouTube and they go to the flashiest packaging.
There's a psychological phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Exactly.
As a teacher, I'm sure you will versed in
Absolutely.
it, but it relates to how much you know about something and your confidence about it. So when you start off, you don't know much and you have low confidence. As you know a little bit, your confidence skyrockets, but you still don't know that much. As you learn more, your confidence in the topic actually drops because you actually know how little you actually understand about it.
Yeah. And I think jiu-jitsu is definitely good for that. It is definitely good to teach you that process because you can walk in with all the confidence in the world and you actually get, jiu-jitsu relates to a lot of other sports. A lot of AFL players, a lot of rugby league teams are employing jiu-jitsu coaches to help with their wrestling and all that sort of stuff. So you do actually get a lot of footy guys or ex-footy guys or even ex-bodybuilders and ex-powerlifters that walk through into the academy thinking, I'm the biggest, baddest, strongest guy here. I'm going to smash everyone.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. And I've seen it time and time again. And probably a really good example is your son, Connor, who is, how old is Connor? 13?
Just turned 14.
Just turned 14. We have these little challenge matches at our Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And I think the only person that Connor, 14-year-old boy, has lost to, he's beaten fully grown men over 100 kilos. The only guy he's lost to is his dad.
What?
So, you definitely see those guys walk in with a lot of bravado, and I was the same. I came in super heavy, just spend a lot of time bodybuilding and super strong, and I come in, you think you can use that strength and smash everyone. You realize you're first class. Strength means zero.
Yeah, well, that's actually something I've been noticing a lot. A lot of powerlifters are getting into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of parallels between powerlifting and jiu-jitsu, right? Even over the years, it's this sport that's been around forever, but only recently it's becoming a big deal. But a lot of powerlifters, after the lifting career is over, they want to try something else because you can't just training for powerlifting is very intense. Then they go do some martial arts like jiu-jitsu. Instantly humbled, and some of the best strength coaches in the world are doing that. Yeah, starting from scratch, and it's very interesting.
And look, jiu-jitsu is not just a martial art or a sport for strong powerlifters, ex-bodybuilders, footy players. Some of the best jiu-jitsu people that I've seen are what society would classify as nerds.
Yeah,
and also women. The women at our academy have to deal with. We got a lot of big guys at our academy, right? Women have to deal with 100+ kilo guys on a nightly basis, and they can't go strength for strength. So their technique just gets sharpened to a point, and your wife Rachel is a perfect example, who's a brown belt. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They become that efficient with their technique that they can deal with these 100+ kilo strong guys, and it's awesome to watch. I love watching the new guy come in. As much as we embrace all the new people and come on in and learn this martial art, it's so good to watch the women and the younger kids wrestle with these footy guys, and they're sort of almost left in amazement. What just happened to me? How did I just get choked? Or
do you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. You asked me a little bit earlier about the Gracies that I've trained with now. I've trained with one guy who was a 6-time world champion. All right, at about I can't remember what weight class he is. He's somewhere around 70 kilos. I'm 100 kilos. I've been training for 15 years.
And some. You feel like you're about 150 to grapple with, but yep.
Thank you. I'll take it. And so I'm pretty experienced. I know what I'm doing. But there's levels to this, just like powerlifting. There's guys who are going to live on, achieve well on the Australian stage. And then you go overseas and see the guys who train at Westside Barbell.
Yeah.
It's a whole different animal.
Aussies do all right, but
Aussies do quite well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few going really well
Yeah.
at the moment. But there's levels to everything.
Of
and
course.
the most challenging role I've ever had was with that 70 kilo guy, because it felt like I was fighting water. I'd go somewhere, he's there. I'd go to frame off him, he's somewhere else. You know, it was just such a pure expression of technique, and he wasn't being arrogant. He was probably going at about 30% of his capacity, but he knew what was going to happen, and he was going to get it there. And like we said about strategy, there was not a thing I could do about it. You know, and it's so, even when you've been training for a long time, if you really love it, there's nothing better than rolling with something like that and just seeing the levels that exist.
Back to the belt system. So what's going through your
You
mind?
asking for a purple belt?
No, I'm definitely not.
6 months.
What's going on at each headspace? Like rewind the clock back to
Yeah.
white, blue, purple, brown. What's going on, and what are you learning? Not from a technique standpoint. I'm more interested in the mental and
About yourself?
About yourself.
Yeah, look, I think it does vary for different people. It really does, and it depends on whether it's a sort of school that's a competitive school. At some schools, black belt just means you can tap people out. You know, at other schools, it means you've got a full understanding of the original self-defense curriculum and how to teach that to anybody. It's not like other martial arts where there's a standardized belt system. But I guess to what you're saying, and the Dunning-Kruger principle is so applicable here. I think to start backwards, black belt is where, and it sounds cliched, but it's true, when you realize how much you don't know, and when you do realize that there really are levels to this, and it sounds lame to say that's the beginning of the journey, but it really is, and that's when you start having fun. Because up until there, for a lot of people, it's like, I want to get the belt, I want to get the belt, I want to get the belt.
And that's a good point you raised, because people can get fixated on that belt, and especially I know at white belt level, the first thing you want to do is get off white belt. Like this, I don't want to be a white belt. Let's just get me off this thing.
Yeah.
And eventually, over time, I'm not going to say the belts become irrelevant, but they become less. They're less to the forefront of your mind. Yeah.
I think without saying that, I mean, there are some places that get heavily criticised for having belts based on time periods. Every 6 months, you're going to get a stripe. Every 2.5 years, you're going to get a belt. On this day in December, you're going to be a black belt. Okay. I'm not to say that's right or wrong. It's not the way we operate. But I think that to a degree, a belt reflects your commitment to jiu-jitsu, how much time you've put in, how much effort, how much energy. An analogy that I like to use, and I get this from Hoyce a lot, and from Hoyre and his brother, and it comes back to Mike Tyson again. And they said that if Mike Tyson walks into a karate tournament, he's going to win. He's going to beat everyone. He's going to knock everyone out. He's going to walk away with that little plastic karate medal or the trophy or the sword or whatever it is you win for winning that tournament. Is he a black belt in karate? Does he know the katas? Does he know the philosophy behind it? Does he know the movements? No, he's a good fighter. He's an excellent fighter. But he's not necessarily everything that epitomizes karate. Yeah. And I think with jiu-jitsu, it's about coming to terms with that mindset of jiu-jitsu. When you're a white belt, you've probably come from something else. You've probably come from football or from soccer, or a lot of people come across from other martial arts. And it's almost about unlearning. It's about, to me, a blue belt is someone who gets a basic understanding of what jiu-jitsu is. You know, it doesn't mean they're a world killer. It's the first belt. You know, it's about, okay, I understand that this is about not using my strength. I understand that this is about being relaxed in difficult positions. I understand that this is about being calm and using leverage and finding my way to a good position. Can I apply it? Some of the time, yeah. All of the time? Definitely not. You know, if there was anyone who could apply it all of the time, everyone would just do exactly what they did.
And blue belt's also the level you can go out and get sponsored by every nutrition brand out there, and
as long as you've got your own blog.
Yeah, you got to have your own
very,
blog.
very important.
Yep.
All right. And
that's when you start referring to yourself as a martial artist.
Yeah. And you're a social media influencer at blue belt level. It all happens.
It does. And as long as you keep your stories up to date, you can do that.
So, in all seriousness, no. That's why blue belts cop the most shit.
It is. It becomes that point of, you know, just enough to be dangerous. And that's not a bad thing, because everyone who got their purple belt was a blue belt at one point in time.
Yeah.
Everyone who got their brown belt or their black belt was a blue belt at one point in time. And of course...
You told me you skipped yours.
Well, I tried. I was actually on it for quite a while. But the difference now is people can put themselves out there so much. Like when I was, as I said, when I was training, that first competition I was at, the whole tournament stopped for a blue belt match. And it was a big deal. That meant that you'd been training jiu-jitsu for 2 or 3 years. You know, now in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. If you know 2 years of jiu-jitsu when everyone else knows 2 days of jiu-jitsu, oh, sure enough, you're a god.
Yeah.
You know, in your own mind and in your own tiny little community. But nowadays, there's less of that because there's so many people. There's thousands of people doing jiu-jitsu in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't even guess how many.
Well, we
So
were
would you-
actually looking at some numbers about what's the most popular sports and things, just, you know, Musashi marketing stuff. And martial arts, and probably a lot of that is jiu-jitsu, is
Yeah.
one of,
Yep.
if not the most popular sport.
It is,
Absolutely.
definitely. There's so many people getting into it. There's so many.
Yeah, definitely.
So at blue belt, you're dangerous enough to you're probably proficient enough to be comfortable with some untrained opponent.
You can hurt someone else, but you'll probably hurt yourself.
Yes.
Put it that way.
The next belt there from there on is purple belt.
Purple belt's fun.
So it's a fun belt.
Purple belt's when you get over that little hump, you realise that you know a bit, but you also realise that there's still a lot you don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
and you realise that there's aspects of this that I want to be part of my game.
How do you come to that realization at purple belt like this? Obviously, there's still more to learn. This is one of those things about this sport. You can't learn everything. You forget more than you learn, actually. But at purple belt, like, is it that you're getting tapped continuously by brown and black belt? What is it that makes you realize, there's actually so much, or like I'm not even close to being at the end of this journey? There is no end.
Yeah, there's no end. I think we were talking about experience before and learning from experience. And I think that purple belt's really one of those things, getting through that. And people talk about the blue belt blues. Say that 3 times fast. It's one of those things where they're really high. They get their belt. Oh, great! I can smash all the white belts in the academy, and then I go and visit a friend's academy, or I realise that those guys who've been training for 5 years, you know, those times I tapped them, or maybe they let me because all of a sudden they're a little bit harder to beat now. What's going on? Has my jiu-jitsu got worse? Oh, they weren't really trying. They were teaching me. They were letting me get to good positions. They were like when Dad lets you hit the cricket ball over the fence when you're a kid. It's not that you're a better cricketer than Dad. It's that he's nurturing your way through.
And that happens a lot in jiu-jitsu, and a lot of like white and blue belts don't realize it, right? You get to certain like good positions with a black belt, and you might even almost get to the position where you're about to submit them, and then they escape, and you think, yeah, I almost submitted a black belt. Little do you know, they've let you get to that position just to work on their escapes and work on their different entries into different things. So, yeah, there's definitely some
Or you do
evolving
get
and
that
learning. Or you
know,
do.
sometimes you do get that submission. Sometimes there's a
Rare.
really specialised element, and I think that's part of it as well. You see a lot of blue belts on the scene who are really good at 1 or 2 things, and if no one's got the answer for that, they excel.
Yeah, well, it's not paper, scissors, rock, you know. Like maybe 99 times out of 100 a black belt will win, but sometimes something might fall into your...
And not only that, if you've got a rock, paper beats it every time. You know, but the thing with jiu-jitsu is when you've got a rock, I can work out the next technique that's going to beat that rock.
Yeah.
And it might not be paper. I might have a diamond hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Wow, that's a weird analogy.
Yeah.
But
Went too
it
deep.
works.
Is that Minecraft?
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
But it works because people are constantly problem solving. This is where it becomes like human chess.
Yeah.
You've got a question for me. You know, you've got a technique that I don't know the answer to. You'll get me with that technique a few times. I'll work out an answer. And that way we're both going to get better together because once I work out the answer, you need to propose the next question. And then so it almost becomes like a physical dialogue where you attack, you counter, you recounter, on and on. And I think as you get towards that purple belt, you understand more about those recounters. You understand that idea of, okay, it's not just if I do this, then that happens. It becomes a lot more of a flow.
You got to be a few steps ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
And look, what is purple considered sort of the start of the more senior ranked belts? Because I know I look at a purple belt and I think, okay, they're respected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you take that line that a black belt's going to have trained jiu-jitsu for 10 years or so, and we said that time's shortening, but a purple belt's probably been on the mats for a good 4, 5, 6 years. And in a lot of martial arts, like you were saying earlier, 3 and 4 years is getting you a black belt. So when you've been doing anything for 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 times a week, you're going to be good at it. You know, and that's the thing with black belt as well, is just turn up. Just keep turning up. And unless you're a seriously special person, the more you do it, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
You know?
Why do people get hooked on this sport? It's almost like, you're going to hate me for this analogy, but it's almost like the way CrossFit people talk about CrossFit, right?
The cult.
It's almost like that.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Sometimes
that.
it's worse.
The
Sometimes
family.
it's worse.
The family is a better analogy.
But you know what it is?
But you, like I had like 3 or 4 attempts at starting jiu-jitsu, and eventually you just get the bug, and then that's it. Without it, you're lost. And we're seeing that at the moment with a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, especially being in isolation. People that are hooked on jiu-jitsu, they're not rocking up to training once a week and then they do it on the weekend at the sport. They're training every single day. This is 7 days a week. So you go from someone like a black belt that might have been training for 10, 15, 20 years every day, and now they haven't been able to train at all. That's going to have some serious psychological effects.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny, you know, you asked me a while ago what were the reasons I got into jiu-jitsu, and one of them was because I saw Royce in the first UFC. But another one was, like, a lot of us are pretty physical when we're growing up. Whatever your sport was, you want to weigh, and I think part of our society is you need a physical outlet, whether that's lifting, whether that's playing footy, whether that's doing CrossFit, whether it's jiu-jitsu. So in part of it, it becomes that outlet for a lot of people, that physical outlet, that mental outlet as well to, you know, you've had a tough day at work or whatever, and when you've got someone right in front of you who wants to choke you out, you can't be thinking about whether or not you've got that report done at 5 o'clock. You've got to be thinking about where their hand is and what you can do to survive.
Yeah.
But also I think it is that sense of camaraderie. You know, I shy away from that term, that family term, but it becomes very, very similar to that, doesn't it? And, you know, you see it at our academy, you see it at all academies. It's about finding the right fit for you. And these people, because what you're sharing is so, I mean, it's basically an agreement that when I tap you, you're going to let go, because otherwise you've simulatedly killed me or broken my leg, you know? So there's a certain level of trust, and that physical contact as well is something that a lot of people really do miss, especially when we're so isolated. You know, being able that and there's psychological studies that show that physical contact, you know, if you hug someone for 20 seconds, you're automatically going to feel better and your body's going to release all those hormones, that kind of thing. Jiu-jitsu, even though you're trying to hug them into submission, it's a lot like that. And
Still intimate.
It really is, you know. So I think that's a big part of it, is being able to, one, see your friends on a daily basis, you know, and 2, be able to get that physicality out there with other people. I love lifting. You know, I've been lifting too much while we've been off, because it's pretty much all I can do. And I really do love it. I like the different goals, the focus that, you know, Henry Rollins, you know, 200 pounds is always 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, what you can do in comparison to that. But that's not interacting with another person.
Yeah.
That's not
It's interacting with the barbell. Yeah.
It's interacting with the barbell. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think that's what people are missing the most. You know, it's not even so much getting their jiu-jitsu better. It's not even the martial art itself. It's that outlet and what they get from it socially and emotionally.
We've been doing a few sort of classes online at home. It's not the same. No. It's nowhere near the same. You need to be at the academy. You need to be around the people. You need to learn from your coach that you're used to and you're comfortable with, and you understand how they teach. It's so tough. Yeah. And look, who knows when it's going to be opened again. I heard someone say this morning that gyms aren't reopening until maybe even September. I'm hoping it's going to be quicker than that. Have you heard anything?
No, look, I think the reality about this whole thing is no one knows. It's all speculation.
Probably the worst sport, though, for social distancing. You're literally this far from other people's faces while they're doing this. Straight in your face. And we've got a few of those at our academy that definitely breathe deep right into your ear and your face.
Absolutely. And you see people at the moment, I mean, the NRL's looking at getting back into things.
Yeah.
They're talking about AFL going back. Premier League's looking like going back soon in England. They're all in talks. But I think what people forget is they're multi-million dollar operations that have, one, they've got a lot of advocates for them, you know. 2, they've got a lot of money, and 3, let's face it, it's give the people what they want, give them their entertainment. You know, that's for a lot of people out there who maybe aren't as physically active as a lot of us. They identify with their local football team. Yeah. You know, they're Roosters fans or Rabbitohs fans or Bulldogs fans or whatever it might be. So I think that when they bring that back, that might actually serve to help people's mental health a little bit.
Yeah.
With jiu-jitsu, it's very, very different. You know, in terms of the physical contact, it's probably the same as rugby league. You know, but people out there aren't really going to care. They're not going to tune in to watch you and I. You know, they're not going to sit down on Friday night with their families just to watch Grant and Ross wrestle.
They should.
They should. Definitely they should.
It's a sight to see.
Jay would, but no one else would.
Yeah.
But
watch me get choked out 100 times in a row.
99 out of 100.
Yeah, but I think
100.
And a lot of jiu-jitsu people are getting really worked up about it. They're kind of, well, if they can go back, we can go back. And just because they are going back doesn't mean it's right. Not from a moral perspective, not from a physical contact perspective. I mean, it came out in the news just today that a couple of those league players were up in Taree on a camping trip and riding their bikes on the beach and all that kind of stuff. And, okay, are they going to get away with it? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Is it the right thing to do? It's probably not. You know, jiu-jitsu, it's a lot of close contact. Could we get back to it? Maybe, maybe not. Is it the right thing to do? Probably not quite yet.
It can. I think why a lot of people are stinging to get back to jiu-jitsu is because you do train so frequently, but it's just more. It's more than that. It's a mental thing. It's a mental health check for you, or a mental. Like it definitely helps with my mental health. Like when I was younger, I'm biggest, and still now probably sometimes I can be a bit of a hothead. Jiu-jitsu is my way of getting out my aggression in a controlled environment where I can't act like a absolute. Oh, I probably have on certain times, but you're getting that aggression out without.
I guess that's the whole mental aspect of jiu-jitsu is not just aggression; it's aggression and calm at the same time.
So I'm missing it. I'm edgy. You probably see me like on this podcast. I can't sit still. Like I need to be doing something, and I'm missing it a lot.
It's funny though. I think it was Hicks and Gracie said something along the lines of jiu-jitsu is ultimately the art of being comfortable in an uncomfortable position. And certainly from a self-defense perspective, that's something that we push. We push the idea that, okay, if someone's going to attack you and your first response is panic, then you're going to be in real trouble. Yeah. But if someone's going to attack you and your first response is, I do this 3 times a week or 4 times a week, you're going to be much better off. And that's where we look at the whole idea of, and people who talk about these martial arts being holistic and being everything for everyone. No, it's good for a lot of people, but it's not everything to everyone. There's plenty of people who go through the world without ever, punching someone, kicking anyone, wrestling anyone, and they get through life all right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of us who we need to do that in some way, shape or form, But you take what's happening at the moment with the lockdown and all that kind of stuff, and I like to think that you go through some pretty tough times in jiu-jitsu. When you've got a 150 kilo guy on top of you and he's just sweating and dripping and not moving and holding you down, it's not a really cool place to be.
Yeah.
And then you realise, hang on, this is going to pass. This too shall pass. And it's the same at the moment. There's some people, I'm lucky. I've got a great family set up. We get to do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I get to lift my weights. Not everyone's got that, but everyone's got something at home that they can hold on to. Everyone's got something. If you look for that comfort in that uncomfortable position, I think it's going to be a lot easier to get through this. And that's an advantage that we've got.
Now's not a bad time if you're actually doing jiu-jitsu to get all the other family members involved that might not have been involved. I'm the same as you. I'm lucky my whole family trains, but now's the time if you're doing jiu-jitsu and your wife or your husband's at home and they don't, start from the beginning with them, work some stuff with them, use them as a grappling dummy
And you're actually seeing that in a lot of academies where they're doing online Zoom lessons or they're doing something like that. Those same teachers who 5 years ago were all talking about how terrible it is to learn online are all of a sudden huge advocates, and we've been meaning to do this for such a long time. But a lot of people are getting their family involved. And that's actually, the reality is when we go back to normal isn't going to be what we knew it is.
No.
It's going to be, I think people are already starting to use the phrase, the new normal.
Yeah.
So we're already looking at ways to bring family members in, to make it so that we can get back there. And it's going to be a staged return. We're not going to go back on the first night and be face-to-face, chest-to-chest, full on. It might be non-contact. Now, how do you do non-contact jiu-jitsu? It's like playing rugby league without a ball.
Yeah.
But you can. There are things you can do. And because, like you were saying, Ross, that it's so much more than just the physical. I think that the first day that we open up, we say, hey, you know what, guys? Maybe we can only do solo drills, but we're all in the same room. People are just going to flock because they've missed that. They They have missed the physical side of things, but they've just missed that contact. They've missed being in the same room with other people. And just this, I mean, we usually see each other 5-6 times a week, and it's a weird on one night if we don't see each other.
Yeah.
And this is our first time seeing each other for probably a couple of months.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
I read something that
it feels weird that we're not going to roll now.
Yeah.
You guys can hug after
Guess
this.
what we're doing?
Oh, Nogi.
Getting these off the wall and
Well, Nogi, you just mentioned Nogi. So there is some different variations of jiu-jitsu. You've got the traditional sort of kimono or gi.
Yeah.
And then like the latest trend, and we touched on this earlier in the podcast, is sport jiu-jitsu. A lot of it's taking place in what people in jiu-jitsu call no-gi. It's basically shorts and a rash shirt.
Yeah.
What's the differences?
Look, so no-gi is going to be a lot more similar to what people would expect to see from MMA. In the gi, it's the traditional way of training. That's you've got cloth to hold on to and clothes to hold on to. And a lot of people sort of say, oh, yeah, but I'm not going to wrestle someone in pajamas. They're not going to be able to do these collar chokes. And I turn around and say to them, yeah, but if you're going to get in a self-defense position where someone else is not wearing any clothes at all, you've probably got to question a few of your life choices in the lead up to them. So,
well, it's also a tool. I know a lot of jiu-jitsu maneuvers actually use the gi.
Rely on the gi. Yeah. That's exactly right. And because of that, it can be a slower, more methodical, more systematic approach. It's a lot more... I don't think it's right to say it's more technical or more strategic, but it's a lot more methodical, I think you'd say. And as a result of that, watching two really experienced grapplers in a gi, if you don't know what you're watching, it can be really, really boring. You don't know what you're looking for. Why is that guy lying between that other guy's legs? You know, why are they just holding onto each other's clothes? It looks like they're just cuddling. They haven't moved. It's almost like watching paint dry.
It's like watching chess.
It's like watching
It's exciting
chess.
to some
Exactly
people.
Right. If you understand it, it's riveting. It's fascinating. But if you don't understand it, it's just weird people doing weird things.
Yeah.
You see that at the UFC a lot. As soon as it hits the ground, you've got your standard 50% of the audience, boo, stand them up. And it's just like, no, now it's
this
starting
is
to
where
get
it
exciting.
starts for us.
Yeah,
That's exactly
exactly.
right. And I think that as jiu-jitsu sort of become a more commercial entity, that's where a lot of different organisations have come into play, and that's where the whole no-gi thing really comes to the fore. I don't necessarily think no-gi is bigger than it's ever been before. A lot of people think it is. I think it's just got a lot more exposure now.
Yeah, a lot
there's
of the
more
big
opportunities.
A lot of big comps with some money behind it tend to be no-gi.
And that's exactly right. It's where the money is at the moment.
Yep.
Why? Because casual fans can watch it. You know, if you guys were sitting here watching a gi match, you know, you could probably understand a lot of it. You'd be sitting there going, you know, why are they hugging like that?
You could almost argue that they're two different sports. They're not, but
They're
two different games, really.
There's two different strategies. And
Well,
they're definitely starting
it's
to
like equipped
diversify.
powerlifting and raw powerlifting.
Yeah,
So,
it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
you know, powerlifting started off equipped with these squat suits and things, and now it's moved to something people can relate to, a bench
Yeah,
press.
it's getting a lot closer
Yeah.
back to raw. And back in the day,
You
had
do
guys
raw, don't you, Dhiren?
Yeah, well, raw with wraps, which is actually the original raw, because
Right.
people think, you know, sleeves, wraps, well, I don't know. What's raw? You should really squat naked without a belt, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, and in jiu-jitsu as well, you've got your two crowds. It's probably the same in bodybuilding. It's like some people really gravitate towards the gi and that's all they do. Some people purely no gi.
Yeah.
Some people enjoy both and enjoy both games. And we do both at our academy, and I think most academies do
Yeah,
nowadays.
definitely.
It's almost the old school versus the new school.
Yeah, it is. And unless you're competitive, I think that keeping a real balance
Yeah.
is really cool. And I mean, you look at powerlifters, the guys who are training gear, the guys who are training equipped, are the guys who are going to compete equipped.
Yeah.
And if they're training raw, they're going to compete raw. But the people out there who just lift because they want to get stronger, or they lift because they want the aesthetics, or they lift for whatever reason, they're going to do whatever's going to get them towards their goals.
Yeah.
Now, up until recently, there was a huge argument that, you look at all the guys in the no-gi who are winning, well, they started training in the gi. And they've always trained in the gi, and therefore gi's better. But the reality is there weren't really guys out there who were training no-gi specific, really. Yeah. They were training everything. So, of course, if you train 5-6 times a week, 3 in the gi, 3 no-gi, against someone who only trains no-gi but trains 3 times a week, of course you're going to win. You're training twice as much as them. But now what's happening is you are seeing specialists. You're seeing guys come through. Like, you look in Australia, there's guys like Craig Jones, Lockie Giles, Jeremy Skinner.
Shout out to Lockie Giles and his
and
wife Liv, Musashi Athletes.
Yeah, and they're competing in no-gi at the moment, but if you look at their history, they're excellent grapplers in the gi. They're phenomenal. But at the moment, there seems to be more opportunities in no-gi. And if you're going to compete where there's opportunities and you're going to take those opportunities for all that you can, you'd be mad not to have a certain amount of specificity in your training. And that means you look at Lockie, a lot of his training in the lead up to ADCC was wrestling focused. Now he's a jiu-jitsu guy and there's a lot of crossover, but there's also a lot of difference. So training whatever you can to do to be the best at what you're doing makes a lot of sense. So if you're going to compete no-gi, train no-gi.
It's like many sports, you got to specifically train for what you're trying to get better at. One of the questions I ask about a lot of sports is, what's the balance between technique, physicality, and psychology? And, obviously it's very different for basically every single sport. Yeah. But I think for jiu-jitsu in particular, technique is a very large part of it. Look at any other sport. You can almost muscle your way out of a lot of things. Yep. Say rugby league, for example. Yep. If you're big and strong, like you're gonna do something on the field. Jiu-jitsu, that can't always get you out of a hole. You can't always bench press your way out of a situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes I say to a lot of beginners when they come in, it's almost learning to train against your instincts. You say it's a really good example you give. You can't bench press your way out. If you've got someone on mount on top of you, and I think by now people who have seen the UFC understand what mount is. They're sitting, that old bully position, they're sitting on your chest, they're sitting on your belly. There's not a lot you can do. Yeah. You go and push them up, which is everyone's first instinct. You're giving up an armbar straight away.
Yeah.
And that's where we were talking about the idea of self-defense jiu-jitsu. If someone pushes you up, you're going to take that arm.
Yeah.
When we're wrestling each other in the academy, there's no way, if I'm on top of you, you're going to go, boom, because you know that happens. So it becomes about strategy. Technique's super, super important. I think it's about mentality as well. Those guys, not everyone gets it. We were talking about you learn on your first night that it's not about strength. No, I've had people who train for 2, 3, 4, even some guys who train for 5 years. That can be a really hard lesson, especially if you came through from another sport where physicality was so important.
We used to rely on your physicality.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And it will get you a certain distance.
Yeah.
We'd be ridiculous to say that this 50 kilo female will beat this 120 kilo bloke.
Yeah.
That's okay. Jiu-Jitsu is designed for smaller people to defeat larger people if there's a disparity in skill.
Yeah.
But, for every, a couple of, Dhiren and Gracie kind of came up with the idea, for every 10 kilos or so, that's worth about a belt. So if you beat yourself up because a white belt taps you, but he's 140 kilos.
Not going to happen. No, kidding.
You're going to go all Vinny on us. If you just think that it's this magical thing where I'm going to be able to beat everyone, that's going to do your head in pretty quickly. So
it does do your head in.
Yeah.
You get a new guy that just walks through the door and he's super physical, you'll still struggle with him. And I know I'm not as far down the path as Grant, but look, it gets you to a certain point, but at a certain point, it just doesn't get you any further.
No, it still does, though. I mean, you look at it and you get times where you get some new young guy who comes in and they go 100 miles an hour, and the first time you use your technique and it's like, oh, this was fun, he's going to learn from it. Then the second time he comes back and does the exact same thing, and then you get an elbow across your nose or something like that, and you still get in the back of your head. Like, you don't just completely switch off your physicality and those urges. There are times where you go, you know what, pal?
Yeah.
I'm as
You're
big
gonna
as
get
you.
it.
I'm as strong as you. You get it?
When and I think black belts are the best at this. They I can see it with Grant when he's like wrestling that new guy that's just super aggressive and there's arms and legs everywhere. It's like a baby giraffe. You can see this sort of evil sort of smile comes on his face. He's still very calm, grappling very calm, but then this smile comes on the face, starts to get a little bit red, and he's going, okay, I need to turn it up on this guy a little bit to teach him what sort of jiu-jitsu is.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot. Yeah. And I was probably one of those guys as well. So I can't really throw everyone under the bus.
You entered with big muscles into jiu-jitsu,
but
right?
it happens so much. And I think that's just part of the process.
Yeah. It's that calm in the storm. When you see me smiling like that, that's this is fun.
Yeah.
People come in to be physical.
Yeah.
They do. If they didn't want to be physical, they'd be doing chairs.
Talk about mat enforcers. A lot of academies... Our academy's like we got a lot of older guys. So and we're all
experienced.
We're all
at life.
Experienced at life, and it's a really sort of good, fun atmosphere. We have fun at our academy, that's for sure. But a lot of academies, there's mat enforcers. There's people that were sort of the head coach might sort of give the old nod to the mat enforcer to sort out the new guy or the guy that's causing some problems.
Yeah, and I think the reality is people have got to remember. this whole art of jiu-jitsu, it is rooted very much in a fight. You know, back in the day, they weren't training to compete in jiu-jitsu events. They were training to fight other people. You know, they were back in the old Vale Tudo days in Brazil, where it was no gloves, no rules. There's some really good VT fights that I have to show you later. But it was really physical. We talk about the gentle art and, you know, using leverage. And then, okay, cool, that's fine.
Well, jiu-jitsu originally involved weapons.
It did.
And it adapted to what we have today. But, you know, jiu-jitsu, when Miyamoto Musashi and the samurais were doing it, there were plenty of weapons involved.
It's what happens when you fall off your horse and you lose your armor.
Yeah.
And that's what my understanding.
And when your last three swords don't work, you still got
and that's why they were in the kimono, because it simulates the sort of stuff that guys would wear underneath their armor.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that when it comes to mat enforcers, it's very much part of the old school, new school mentality as well. Right. The new competitive schools have got guys who can move 1,000,000 miles an hour and can dazzle you and tie you in pretzels before you even know what's happening. But that older school mentality, that slow it down, grind it out, take your time, let them feel every kilo of your pressure and then some. I think that's often the best lesson to learn. If someone comes into my academy and I tap them 6 times in a 5-minute roll, what do they learn? They learn that, okay, that coach is a jerk. He just wants to beat me up. He wants to pick on me, you know? He's bigger. He's stronger. He's been training for 15 years, you know? If I send one of my students over there who's a little bit smaller,
or your son,
or my son, who has been training for a couple of years, you know, or even a couple of months, and that's the thing with jiu-jitsu as well. We're going to go a little bit off topic here, but that person who walks in for the first time, they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to go, "Wow, I just got flogged. I can't handle that. I'm never coming back," or they're going to go, "Wow, I just got flogged. That's amazing. I need to learn how to do that."
Yeah.
You know, and what I always say to my new guys and my new girls is, look, you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win early on here. But then in 6 weeks' time, someone new is going to come in and you're going to feel like you know all of the jiu-jitsu. You're going to feel like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. I know jiu-jitsu. And you're just going to be able to move around them and you're going to think you're a wizard.
I feel like the panda in Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah. Well, you probably will be after we get back from lockdown.
I know.
You know? But that's it. And it can be a bunch of things. I think when it comes to mat enforcers, that tends to happen more when you get those people with the ego who come in and they just want to smash someone and they don't want to realise that jiu-jitsu is a gentle art.
Yeah.
To a degree. You know, they just want to maybe prove something. Maybe they're a footballer or maybe they've had MMA fights or this, that and the other. They just want to come in and smash people. And that's where you put that person on. But yeah, the enforcer isn't always someone who's bigger and stronger and can play pressure. It can be, you know, but sometimes it's someone who's just really, really little and quick and is going to have you out of breath in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, they say fighting is like swimming, right? You know, you can see other people swimming in the water, and even though you've never swam before, you're like, I can swim. Like, come on, these guys are swimming. You jump in the water, you'll drown, right? But, you know, a few lessons, you learn how to swim. But a lot of people out there think that they can swim without even touching the water.
And then they move their arms faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And they get tighter and tighter and tighter.
We still see it in jiu-jitsu. People come in and think that they can fight. And even at the end of the round they might have gone against the black belt. They're still surprised at what happened. Like, how did that just happen to me?
Yeah.
I know how to fight. I've been in 25 street fights and it's crazy. What's probably the most important thing jiu-jitsu has taught you as a person?
To be calm.
Be calm?
To be calm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I've got a temper. I think anyone that says they don't have
never
a temper
seen it.
is lying. You've probably seen it once or twice. But that's the thing. It used to be a lot worse. I mean, I didn't play footy as a kid because I wasn't allowed to. And I wasn't allowed to because mum and dad thought I was too aggressive and I'd probably take someone's head off. So hence I played soccer. So I've always had that temper. Yeah. And just to be calm and...
You're definitely a defender.
Yeah, I was. I may have broken a kid's ankle in the other 12, but that's another story. Yeah, really. But that's all right. It was just a tackle. There was nothing illegal about it.
Was it from a heel hook?
Studs were up.
No, I just connected with the ball at the same time it was on his foot. I swung a little bit harder than he did.
So to be calm, that's probably the so far my biggest lesson as well.
Yeah.
Although I've still got a lot of learning to do.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the term equanimity? Equanimity.
Here we go. This is, I love this.
I love my
Here we
buzzwords.
go.
Come on, you
Let's
got to
go,
whip out
dude.
one buzzword.
Spell it. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Just
Well, basically, it's what you're talking about. The ability to stay calm when there's, considerable things that should be throwing off your calmness.
Yeah.
And I guess it's actually something that you can train,
Definitely.
equanimity. By keep putting yourself into the situation, it's something that you progressively get better at. Obviously, jiu-jitsu makes you much better at this, but lots of things do. Even like yoga, that's where this term comes from. In yoga, you have to remain calm in some of these very hard positions. And that's something that you train. And the more you do yoga, the better you get, the better positions you can hold. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. So
Absolutely.
There's a lot of crossover between yoga and jiu-jitsu as well. Jiu-jitsu has probably the most crossover into other sports.
It's not a lot.
There's like that and gymnastics.
Yeah.
Probably those two sports would have the most crossover into other sports.
Yeah.
It's
if you
amazing.
think about it, like fighting and martial arts is like the pinnacle of sports, right? Like people get in a disagreement in the soccer field, they get in a punch up, right? You get disagreement in jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
or in mixed martial arts, for example, like you're already in a punch up, like where are you going to go from there?
And you know what? That's what I like about strength sports, and it's what I like about martial arts. Because at the end of the day, if you walk into a room and you pick up more weight than me, you're stronger than me.
Yeah.
And it's the same with sprinting or racing events. Swimming, whatever it is. If you get to the end of the pool before me, you're better.
It's a non-bullshit
Yeah,
way.
exactly right.
Yeah.
It's going to sort out who's who. If you beat me in a fight, you got me. You're a better fighter than me on the day. Whereas with a lot of other sports, and I grew up playing a lot of team sports. I think everyone did. Maybe there was that one moment on the field where one of our players miskicked a ball.
Yeah.
You lose the grand final 1-0. There's your entire season. There's your millions of dollars worth of sport down the drain. But I think that all comes back to, you're dead right about yoga and martial arts. It comes back to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
If people walk in and they've got that fixed mindset, that idea of I am this, I know this, I don't know that, it's going to be very hard to succeed. But if you walk in with a growth mindset, I can't do that yet, and that's what we remind people. Yoga, I'm terrible at yoga at the moment. One day I'd like to get good at it. Maybe I will be. I'm not going to get any better at it by doing jiu-jitsu, but if I train in yoga, I can get better at yoga.
Yeah.
The more you turn up for jiu-jitsu, the better you get at jiu-jitsu. The more you put yourself in those difficult situations, the better you can get at handling difficult situations, and it does transfer across.
It transfers across into normal everyday life
Yeah.
as well.
Big time.
There's plenty of situations where we're in at work and we're flustered and and I'm not the best when I'm flustered, but definitely it's like, okay, just remember, take a deep breath. You're okay. Remain calm. You'll get through us one step at a time. It's like that in jiu-jitsu. You might be in a bad position. Okay, take a deep breath. Think about where all our arms and legs are. One step at a time. How do I get out of here? How do I get to a advantageous position? So it can apply to normal life as well.
And what lets you kind of let different things influence you. You let them impact you or not. Day to day as a school teacher, I see teachers every day. You can imagine, we see probably 180 teenagers every single day. And I love them. They're awesome. But they know exactly how to press your buttons. And you see some people get so flustered, so worked up, and you just sit back and you're like, he's pushing your buttons. He's going to say this next, and you're going to react. And sure enough, it happens. You learn how to stay calm, and you realise that something like that, it's not really going to make a difference to your life. Let them go.
Anyone that's thinking of starting jiu-jitsu, is there an age limit?
Our youngest kids are 4.
Yep.
And we've got a 70-year-old who started with us about a year ago. So
That's
there's
me.
really not.
Another 70 a few years ago.
Yeah. So there is no age limit. You see people walk through the door at any age, and they all go through a different journey, different process, I guess. And
I think more significantly than your starting point is, if you train jiu-jitsu smart, there is no end. If you train for efficiency of technique, and if you train with the goal of, I want to be doing jiu-jitsu when I'm 70. I want to be doing it when I'm 80. When I'm 70 years old and I have whatever colour belt or however many stripes, I'm going to be able to beat up that 25-year-old who comes in, but I'm still going to be physically able to do it, because that's the way I like to train.
Yeah.
You get young guys who are training, you see so many, the professionals are training 2 and 3 a days, 6 and 7 days a week, plus strength and conditioning. They are going to excel in the sport at a world level. There's no doubt about that. Are they going to be able to do it when they're 35 or 45? Are they then going to be able to go on and teach that to other people and share it? Or is it just a sport to them? Is it just competition? And if it is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think you've got to have goals in your life, and to be the best in the world, that's a fantastic goal. But for me, I got into jiu-jitsu a little bit later. My goal's more about, one, being able to train every day for as long as I possibly can, and two, sharing that with as many people as I possibly can. Yeah.
So no age restriction, no gender restriction either. Plenty of females getting into jiu-jitsu, and it's probably a sport. Like females, like we mentioned it earlier, females are really good. They've got great flexibility. They seem to move better. Their technique is sharper because it has to be, but it brings a nice balance to an academy.
It really does.
If you've got an academy full of ego-driven meathead guys or whatever, it's definitely it's probably not a good environment to be in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just brings a nice balance.
It really does, doesn't it? And I mean, we're I want to say we're lucky, but we're not. We've got a couple of fantastic females who lead at our academy, and funnily enough, we're both married to them.
They're badass too, the women
but
at our
more than
academy.
that-
Shout out to Jiu-Jitsu women.
Yeah, but more than that, they're such cool role models. You know, they don't walk around flexing. They don't walk around doing anything. They're really, really humble. They want to share everything they possibly can, and they empower other women. Because again, like we've said, women especially are probably not going to coming into a jiu-jitsu academy to fight. There will be some, there's no doubt about that, and that's super badass. But a lot of them are coming in because they want to learn to protect themselves. They want to learn to defend themselves, and they've heard that this jiu-jitsu thing is one of the best ways that someone can be efficient and protect themselves against someone who is bigger, is stronger, all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's my duty, it's our duty to make sure that when they come in, they don't feel intimidated by us. They don't feel threatened by us. But also that we don't treat them with cotton wool and just, let them get some false sense of security, which does happen in a lot of places, and that worries me. We've developed a culture where, the ladies who train with us get really good training, and they feel confident. And they feel confident because they've got those genuine skills. And then when the new guys come in and they think they're going to have an easy round over there, they've got another thing coming.
That's the funniest thing. I think.
I can imagine.
It's super important for women, especially young women as well. I think there's certain things, positions and experiences young women can get themselves into at certain points of their life, not from their own doing, unsafe positions as well. That's why I love jiu-jitsu. I mean, to replicate having a man basically on top of you, putting all his force on you, potentially grabbing your neck or your arms or whatever it is, pinning you down, and to know how to defend against that as a young woman, super important.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the main reasons I've got my daughter doing jiu-jitsu as well. Yeah. What do people look for in an academy if they're just starting? What should you look for?
The right vibe for you. People ask that question a lot. They think that there's some mythical best academy in the world. Okay, maybe there is if
that's yours, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Central Coast, Iconic Jiu-Jitsu.
Shout out.
Shout out us. It really depends on your vibe. If you're someone who wants to go into MMA, you're going to look for someone where there's a lot of people your size, a lot of physical people, a lot of people who want to train hard, value strength, value conditioning, value hard work. If you're someone who wants to get into it because you want to protect yourself, you probably don't want to go to that place where you're going to learn all these fantastic sport-specific techniques, but not how to deal with someone who's trying to punch you. The biggest thing I say to anyone, the biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone who is starting jiu-jitsu is try a few places near you. See what fits you. Because I think you guys were saying with training and exercise last week, you're going to want to go to the place that you enjoy.
Yeah.
You're going to train in a way, I hate long runs.
And it's different for everybody.
It's different for everyone. And the vibe that you're after might be different to the vibe that I'm after. That doesn't make my academy better or worse. It doesn't make you good or bad. It just means that we're not quite that gel.
Yeah.
So the biggest advice I give to people is, try a few places that are near you. See which one vibes with you the most because it's very much about the people who you're training with.
Yep.
It's very much about who you're learning from. And different instructors have got different styles as well. We all know that from school. Some of your teachers, they can all teach the same stuff. It doesn't make them better or worse teachers, but one teacher might resonate with the way you're learning. One teacher might resonate with the way you're learning. And that's where you'll excel.
Yep.
So talk to us about how you transition from a student to a teacher. I guess, it's kind of, I guess you have to really believe in, all the things you've learned over time to teach it well. And can't imagine it's too
I'm
easy.
always a student. I'm always a student. Even when I'm in front of the class, I love the phrase, when you teach, you learn twice. You know, and certainly it's a huge responsibility that I take on to pass on what's been passed on to me and to do it properly and to do it justice. So when I get the opportunity to teach kids especially, you know, that's such a privilege. Yeah. Parents are coming to us and they're saying, we want you to build our kids into better people. We want you to give them confidence. We want you to give them physical skills, but all those psychological skills to deal with pressure situations. So being a teacher, and as I've said, I've been a high school teacher for 20 years, so it's what I love doing, and I always have. And yeah, just the privilege of teaching. I don't think everybody is a teacher. I don't think everybody needs to be a teacher. I don't think every black belt out there needs to teach jiu-jitsu and needs to share it to the world. But also some of the best teachers I've got in my academy, the guys and girls who are helping me teach, they might be white belts, blue belts, purple belts, but they're really great at working with people, or they're really great at breaking down techniques, you know. I say to my guys a lot of the time, you don't need to know every technique there is. I need to. Not that I'm going to use most of them. My jiu-jitsu is whittled down to probably 5 or 6 things that I do over and over and over again. They probably get bored with it, you know, with what I do. But
it gets really boring getting choked by the same submission time and time again for years on end. Yeah.
Isn't there like a Bruce Lee quote about this?
The man, fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times, not the man who's kicked
1,000 kicks one time. Yeah.
That's the one. Way more eloquent than me. So I need to stay up to date with the latest techniques. I need to be able to give my students what they're after, and that might be the self-defense, that might be someone might want to go and compete, and that's why I do keep my toe in that competition pool.
But you're big on seminars as well. You'll travel all around the state, all around the country, really. If someone from Brazil or someone another country, a leader in jiu-jitsu, I mean, you're constantly going to seminars to learn more and bring them back to your academy.
And why it's also quite fascinating is you think about these samurai martial arts, you know, back in the day, they were top secret. You couldn't learn them unless you were, you know, samurai pedigree.
Even when I started, and even to a degree now, there is that tribalism a lot in jiu-jitsu. It's changed so much. It used to very much be your school A, I'm school B, your school C.
Still exists.
It still exists. But maybe we went to school together. But you live 10 Ks that way, I live 10 Ks that way, so we train at different schools. We could be best mates, but if our instructors ever heard that we were training together, or heaven forbid, if I wanted to bring you to train with my mates, you know, that'd be all over. And what that led to was real specific styles, I guess you'd say. You'd almost know that if you learn from Academy A, they're going to have a really heavy top game. If you learn from Academy B, they might be looking to play off the bottom and sweep, for example. You know, what's happening now with the advent of the internet, but also as it becomes more open to more people, is people are more open to cross-training. People are open to not only training in other martial arts, but also to training with other people from other academies with other ideas in that pursuit of all getting better together. You know?
And that's why it's so fascinating, you know. It's like teaching something that was once not meant to be taught, designed to be not taught to people. So.
Yeah. And it was the same with capoeira. You know, I mentioned a while ago that was what I did originally. That evolved in Brazil because fighting was outlawed, and so the slaves in Brazil disguised it as a dance. Yeah. You know, so I guess now that we've got the opportunity to share it and the opportunity to teach it to people, it's almost, like I said, not for everyone, but for me, it's almost my duty to do so. And that's why when we talk about the self-defense and that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of people have moved away from that towards the sport. It's not right. It's not wrong. And I've got the utmost respect for those elite competitors. And in Australia, there are some really, really elite competitors on the world stage, and that's bringing everyone up. You know, but for me, I want to be able to teach anyone jiu-jitsu. I don't want to only be able to teach that person who's really flexible or really agile, or that person who's 17, 18, 19 years old. I want to be able to teach that 70-year-old man and that 4-year-old to move their body in the most efficient way they can.
Yeah, and, you know, putting some samurai geek stuff onto this, this is also like the philosophy of Miyamoto Musashi, right? He was kind of self-trained, and there was all these samurai sword schools in Japan. And, you know, he was, because his dad was a samurai, he kind of had a right to challenge them. So basically the story of Musashi is he went around Japan to all the top sword schools, and obviously it's a fight to the death back then, and he beat them all, right? So he was saying, just some of the stuff I've been reading is that, these sword schools, they get such a big name that the name is bigger than the school itself. So how he won one of his first duels is, against the top counter-attacking school in Japan. He turned up 3 hours late for the fight, and he knew the guy would be angry and rush him. So he counter-attacked him. Because that guy's not an effective, aggressive fighter. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Strategy.
When you starting jiu-jitsu, Dhiren?
When I retire from powerlifting.
Retire. All right, change of pace. Well, we've got you here. Fight tips for UFC 249, which is on May 10th, Australian time, I think May 10th.
I don't do martial arts, but I watch martial arts.
It's a deep card. It's a deep card,
and it's one of the first sports in the world to return to action. I think they're doing it in Florida, where they're able to do it legally.
Yeah. You can do anything in Florida.
Yeah, I know. UFC 249 main card, main event: Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight.
No counter attacking there. It's all
interim lightweight title.
Yeah, look, I think Gaethje's on the up and up.
Yeah.
I just wonder if he's quite where Ferguson is at the moment. I think that having big fight experience is a massive thing. I think Ferguson, everything we've talked about today, Ferguson stays so calm. He's throwing a million miles an hour, but that whole time he's just in the pocket. He's calm. He knows what he's doing.
Controlled chaos.
Exactly.
Good fireworks.
Gaethje's a bit like that, but
but just hasn't got the same experience.
Yeah.
But I love what's happening now. There's so many close fights.
Yeah.
Who you got?
Ferguson.
Dhiren?
Ferguson. He's something else up there.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's
whatever it
Up
is.
there, out there, wherever.
Cejudo versus late replacement Dominic Cruz. This is Cruz's first fight back in a couple of years, I think, or at least 18 months.
Yeah.
And straight for the title.
I think, well,
He deserves it.
I'll say nothing about that. Yeah.
He's put his time in.
Every fight's a title fight these days, isn't
Well,
it? An interim fight or something.
It's funny that the title fight isn't the main event, though.
Well, there's two. The interim.
Oh, it's
they're
interim.
making it an interim.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because Khabib is currently in Ramadan, and he's not
can't-
available.
No, it was COVID. So he was...
Oh, that's right. He's stuck there as well.
Oh,
stuck
and
over
then
there.
Ramadan.
Yeah.
So
he's not back until October or something like that. September,
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
Cejudo Cruz. Who you got, boys?
I can't stand Cejudo. I just
Really?
cannot.
Yeah, but I think he's going to win.
The king of cringe, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think-
it's his first fight back off shoulder surgery as
Yeah.
well, so it'd be interesting to see how he is.
Interesting to have two guys on comebacks. I think Cruz is probably one of, if not the smartest fighters.
Yeah.
Certainly for a lot of years.
Yep.
I think Randy Couture back in the day was the smartest fighter. But Cruz is one of the smartest, definitely. But I think that Cejudo is just a little bit younger, a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful.
Yeah. Interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup.
It is.
Ngannou versus Rosenstruck. This could either be a fizzer
Yeah.
or just a barn burner.
I want to say that the crowd's going to be the real winner. You never know with heavies, do you?
No.
Yeah. And
If
there's
it goes-
not going to be a crowd.
That's true.
I love Ngannou. He's like one of my
Ngannou,
favorite.
but-
Got to go
fighters.
for Ngannou.
But who knows? If it goes 3 rounds, could be a cardiologist somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be.
And that'll be interesting as well to see how many of these guys. I mean, you assume that they're being a little bit naughty on the sly. You assume that they're still training.
Yeah.
But you never know with these guys. You never know the quality of the training. That
Whenever
they
your routine changes, no matter who you are,
Yep.
it's going to be hard.
get. Yeah.
We also got the heading up the prelims, Cowboy Pettis 2.
Oh.
Fan
The
favourites.
The fans are going to win that one.
Fan favourites.
Yeah.
Who knows with this one? Both of these guys either fully show up or they show up every time. I'm not going to ever bag anyone that jumps in that cage, but they're either on or they're off.
Yeah.
Both of these two. And I think it's an important fight for both of them as well.
Oh,
They're,
absolutely.
yeah.
And either one will be on
Yeah.
and the other will be off. That makes it a quick fight.
Yep.
Either way. If they're both on, it is probably the most entertaining fight for the past 5 years.
Similar styles too,
Yeah.
sort of.
Rock and
Yeah.
sock and robots.
Yeah.
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 But they've both got really good jiu-jitsu, underrated
They do.
jiu-jitsu games as
do.
well. So
Good
that'd
cooking
be
games
interesting.
as well.
I'm not going to go through all the fights, but Vadum's fighting. He's
Wait,
back from...
who are you guys picking? Cowboy or...
I got to go Cowboy. I love him.
I'm going to go Showtime. Come on.
Oh, can't be on the fence because that's Showtime's gig. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Cowboy.
Cowboy, nice.
Maybe.
And we've got Vadum versus Olenek.
Who knows?
I know.
Who knows? Vadum, 3-4 years ago, Verdum had the most dominant jiu-jitsu in the heavyweight division. You know, Olenik's shown that he's no slouch either. I think this comes down. I really think that this fight comes down to the training partners that they've got access to in the lead up to it.
I wonder what they're doing. They're obviously training.
Yeah.
They're obviously got a small group of training partners, but it'd be interesting to see this UFC card, what sort of condition they're in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that they would have had a proper full fight camp.
No. And
Apart from Tony Ferguson, he's absolutely nuts. He's
He's
probably
been-
out there kicking a pole somewhere. like
Definitely.
And he actually made this fight was meant to take place, a couple of weeks ago. He actually went and made weight for the fight. He cut weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now he has to cut weight again a few weeks later, which who knows what
That's
sort of
the kind of
impact
dude he
they...
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it just shows he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Should we dive into some sports current events?
Yeah. Let's
Hal,
go.
what have you got for us this week? You've been quiet today, Hal. You
Yes,
okay?
this usually comes about 20 minutes in.
Well,
Yeah.
this is actually his bedtime, so 4:30 in the afternoon.
It's nap time. I'll say that.
What do we got, Hal?
Yeah, we
First
switched
and
it up.
foremost, we wanted to talk about the new Bulls documentary. It's coming out, Last Dance.
The Last Dance. I've seen the first 2 episodes,
Oh.
and I'm not a huge basketball fan. I was so intrigued just from the mental aspect. I saw Jordan probably from the midway through his career to the end of his career, but I didn't know how good he was early on. It was so so cool to
freaky.
watch.
Yeah.
It made me want to grab a bloody basketball
Yeah.
and get out there and pretend to dunk.
Yeah. It's such a good documentary. And you know what's crazy? It was the #1 Netflix show in Australia. That's how much people are missing sports.
Yeah, but
You
you
know?
know what it is back when Jordan was so prominent. I mean, all those guys, they're talking about the 92 Dream Team. They'll get to the 96 Dream Team, all that. That's when basketball, like the NBA, had its first resurgence or had its first real eminence in Australia. I remember being in high school at the time, showing the age a little bit, and we all knew every team. We all had the basketball cards. You'd know the 10th player on any given team. And I think that's what it is. It's a lot of guys and girls who are our generation, and they're sitting down. I sat and watched it with my kids. It's hard enough to get them to watch something for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They were enthralled for 2 hours.
So are my kids. It was crazy. The craziest part of the whole thing so far is, and one thing I wasn't aware of, was the Scottie Pippen story.
Yeah.
Number 2 player in the game getting paid pittance.
Yeah.
I wish
Granted,
I got 18 million pittance.
Well,
Yeah,
I know,
but-
Yeah,
pittance-
relatively speaking.
relative, and because he signed a long contract, but it was
Here's
so
some golf clubs.
interesting to see the dynamics between the administration of the Chicago Bulls and the #1 team in the world. They're basically the administration's looking to sort of rebuild, bring in younger players while they're still at the height and winning championships year after year.
You want to get rid of Phil Jackson?
Yeah.
Phil Jackson, they were like unbelievable. Like you can win the NBA title one year, and then they're talking about seeding, bringing in new
Disbanding
players
the
and
team.
getting.
Well, it
Ridiculous.
happens today. The same stuff,
It
and
still does, but while you're on top,
yeah.
I think
And-
the interesting thing is, though, that it happens today, and teams that do it right feed players in and out, so they filter it. There's a succession plan.
Yeah.
you've got the old guys there.
Yeah.
They're still there to mentor the young guys, and they do it well. But
You saw it went wrong a few years ago with the Australian cricket team when we lost 5 or 6 of the best players to ever play the game within an 18-month stretch. And Australian cricket was down in the dumps for a while because they hadn't fed those players in, because some of those guys stayed in too long because they were dominant. But you look at successful clubs in any sport in the world, they're not making bulk changes. They're not changing their coach, their #2 player, and this and that and the other. You're blooding someone new every season,
Yeah.
and then you don't notice the change.
Well, the Bulls haven't been on top since. But you know what? Something else I discovered when I was digging through the archives was Musashi actually used to have. We used to supply the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s.
Crazy.
One of the many teams.
Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you. Oh, yeah,
Bring
I
it
don't
this
know
way.
if people see that.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a lot of people Musashi used to support back in the day.
Yeah.
Been around for 30-something years, so
Yeah, so I was watching this documentary and I was like, had like this mind-blowing moment. I'm like, what if while this was going on, these guys were on Musashi?
You mentioned you had great seats for the last UFC. Imagine having great seats.
Oh my
for
God.
Jordan. Go around.
there's some other big names
Yeah.
that we've supported over the years.
Yeah,
I was
you're
just
Sydney
reading that
Bears.
list before the podcast. Dorian Yates is on there.
Really?
So, yeah, Dorian Yates. You've got the Green Bay Packers.
You've got the All Blacks,
Yeah, Australian rugby team. Like, this just
the New York Giants.
worked with everyone over the years. What else is happening, Hal?
Next on the list, we're talking about renaming, or naming, I should say, Barcelona's football stadium after Mike Tyson's cannabis company.
Yeah. So the new camp, or the Camp Nou, which is, Barcelona, obviously, one of the greatest football teams in the world. There hasn't been a name for the stadium. It's kept the traditional name rather than a sponsored name. What they're doing is auctioning off the name and sending the proceeds to coronavirus support.
And what, Mike Tyson's weed company, a lot of people probably don't even know that he owns one of the biggest weed companies in the world.
Yeah, so it could, that's what we read, it could be named after Mike Tyson's weed company, which is Tyson Holistic or something like that. But very interesting. And, Spain's a pretty liberal place, so it's not really controversial there.
Talk about someone that has evolved over the years. Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Gone from a savage to one of the most open and honest and reflective humans on the planet, I think.
I think he'd still be a savage.
Yeah. Oh, he'd definitely still be a savage. I read something the other day. He's trying to get back in shape to do some exhibition boxing matches.
Oh.
Imagine if...
Who?
No one. Who would...
Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
There it is. Right now, sign it.
Shout out to Mark Hunt.
Evander Holyfield. It's happening.
I don't know about that. What else is happening, Hal?
Next on the list, you mentioned it briefly earlier about some NRL stars getting busted going camping during lockdown.
Saw this.
Very controversial.
Latrell Mitchell and Josh Adokar spotted going camping.
Breaking social distancing rules.
So I guess, I don't know, they might be open to some... I think they made the mistake of posting it on social media. That's where they shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. But then they posted it on social media. And it's all gone wrong from there. So I guess...
Well, I don't think they posted it. I think, people are like, I'm camping with Josh Adokar.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Excited people. But I guess something's going to happen.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because the NRL will be so much under the spotlight at the moment, especially since they've just lost their chief executive.
But they're about to go back into training
that's
this week.
So, and there's already a lot of people who are critical of that.
Yeah.
So they've got to, if nothing else, they've got to be seen to be doing all the right things about it.
Yeah,
true.
And they're talking about isolating players in hotels and,
Yeah.
Or on a beach in Tahri.
Yeah.
We don't always make the right decisions when we're in our early 20s.
Through to 50s.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm still not making the right decisions.
What are you talking about? Speak for yourself. Always make the right decision.
Yeah, you do.
Still making all the wrong ones.
What else you got, Hal?
The cricket is talking about legalising tampering.
Ball tampering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Legalising it.
Yeah. So, and
Out with the sandpaper.
well, maybe not legalizing it to the extent of the Australian cricket team, but you know how they spit on the ball and obviously rub it just to, give it a bit of shine.
Oh, some do more than spit on it.
Yeah, but the spit is a carrier for coronavirus, right? So they're actually talking about
So what are they going to use instead of spit?
some kind of moisturizing spray that allows them to actually legally...
Moisturising ball rub.
Yeah. I think, you've got some of that under your desk. On your desk.
Oh, talk about editing things out of a podcast. That's going. Yeah, that'd be interesting. So some sort of spray so they can still continue to shine the ball and get a little bit of swing and reverse swing and stuff happening, but without using spit. It goes through. The thing is, though, ball goes through to the wicketkeeper. He then flicks it off to the person in the slips, throws it over to the person in the cover, throws it up to the bowler. Like, it goes through 5 sets of hands. What are they going to disinfect it after every time? Like,
yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I read something else the other day, and it's like something from a cricket fan. It's like, thank the sporting lords that this is happening during footy season and not cricket season.
Well, there's talk with the T20 World Cup. What's going to happen with that?
Oh, yeah.
So
interesting. What else, Hal?
Last on my list, the 2020 NFL Draft set a new record for viewership.
So the draft usually takes place at in a certain venue, right? It's almost like a big awards show or something.
Yeah.
And it's all been done online or televised? Or
Something like that. I'm
You
not
guys are the
fully
NFL.
across this, but NFL is like one of the only sports I don't really watch.
So the draft, they've basically done it by broadcast or by online.
Yeah.
And
Two main reasons for this. So first of all, it's a 15.6 million people watched round one. The first reason, obviously, because of coronavirus, more people are interested in sport. The second reason is it's actually been a pretty impressive draft class.
True.
More than anything else. Yeah, they're expecting a lot of young talent.
Yeah. No, it should be pretty interesting. Like, everything to do with sports now is just engaging people so much. Because there's this absence of sport from people's lives.
And there was a young Aussie guy, I can't remember his name. He was an
ex-AFL
AFL
guy, yeah.
He didn't get picked up in the draft, but he got picked up straight after it.
Wonder what position. Yeah, some,
Punter.
yeah, punter for sure. He's not even part of the team as a punter.
He's like a winger.
Well, they
Yeah,
have
they
like
house
they have
them
3
somewhere.
different teams.
Hangs out with the footballers. They do call it special teams.
Shout out to all the punters out there. That's it, Hal.
That's it for you.
Any listener questions this week?
We had a couple today. The first one was from Charlie C. And he has a question regarding exercise with low weight. And he says, exercising with low weight and high reps, is that the best way to tone muscle?
Tone, gain muscle?
He just says tone.
Well,
Is he? There's a lot of things you
Yeah.
need to consider. Are they a new lifter, experienced lifter, and what their
That's
goal?
all the question says. If I could
Tough.
interpret it, if I'd say, if you want to just tone your muscle, I
Yep.
guess he's thinking of more aesthetic than anything else.
Yeah. Well, if you want to tone your muscle, listen to the last podcast where we talked about fat loss. But obviously, toning is about building and leaning up. So to build muscle, you got to go relatively heavy. To lose some fat, obviously, it comes back to calories in, calories out. So I guess it's kind of a myth that higher reps are better for toning and lower reps are better for bulking up. There's more than one way to achieve both. So
Yeah. Look, probably when most people talk about toning up, they're talking about putting on lean muscle and being that lean muscle being visible. So they're being lean enough where you can see it. I always recommend anyone starting, try and train 3 to 4 days a week. No more than sort of 10 working sets per body part per week, and somewhere in the 8 to 12 rep range is a good starting point.
yeah.
And that's what I'd recommend as well. As long as they're looking after their nutrition and also getting some cardio in.
And focus on compound movements.
Yeah, focusing on good, solid compound movements, they'll achieve it. But it's a long process. But a lot of the toning comes down to cardio and nutrition, and a lot of the muscle gain is going to come from lifting weights consistently.
Nice. We have another question from Daniel Cabrera, who asks, more of a personal question. What kind of music do you guys listen to when you're exercising?
Michael Bublé. No.
What do you
Let's
guys,
ask our guest,
do you guys have any music on at the dojo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We roll.
This is the fun part.
This is
Isn't
the
it?
fun part, isn't it? Yeah, we roll to music every night, and it almost depends on the mood a lot of the time. To lift, I listen to heavy stuff. I listen to
Some examples. Yeah.
Hatebreed, Pantera, stuff like that. Diving into a bit of black metal these days. But at the academy, I really use music as the mood setup. If you've got a couple of those meatheads coming in, a couple of new guys who you're worried, I'll throw something on really chill out. Fun.
Britney Spears.
Yeah, Britney Spears. Rick Astley gets a run from time
Rick
to time.
Astley gets a run at our
Well,
academy more than he should,
Yeah.
it should be 0.
Zero, but
What about you, Dhiren? What do you listen to?
Oh, it depends what kind of training is going on. Deadlift day, got to whip out some Tupac. But apart from that, just regular, mainly hip hop. Lots of Rage Against the Machine as well. But yeah.
I listen to podcasts. Crazy.
when you lift.
Yeah. Because if I listen to music, I get sort of too worked up and I might gas myself out, or I'm going at too fast a pace, or I'm trying to lift too much weight and injure myself. I like to remain, as we were talking about before, nice and calm, listen to podcasts, focus on squeezing the muscle and getting the most out of the workout.
Well, it's actually been studied that music can have a significant psychological effect on your performance. You look at every single swimmer in the Olympics when they come out, they got their headphones on. I even think that you do your walkout song as a fighter, that plays on your mind on how you're going to perform. Every time I lift heavy weights, the hype up song makes a big difference.
There's research on listening to music and training as well. So if you're listening to your music when you're training, is it going to have that boost effect? Or if you listen to calm music when you train, but then you kick your psych up music for your last set or when you compete or that, is it an ergogenic aid like nutrition, I
reckon it is. It does help, and especially with cardio as well. I find
What?
cardio, Jiu-Jitsu is cardio for us. But it can help when you're at the academy and you're rolling and you're struggling for breath. If the music's sort of loud enough and you're in the swing of it, you forget about how exhausted you are.
Yeah.
You can almost get into the
'cause
flow or the beat of the music
You
while
have like
you're
an
rolling
emotional
as well.
connection to many songs. If you listen to music a lot, lots of songs can trigger some emotions. Like hyping you up is an emotion.
You talk to my wife, an ex-dancer, who's gone into jiu-jitsu. Her jiu-jitsu, when she's rolling with someone, she'll wait to a certain beat in the song before she starts to sort of work a certain technique. That's
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty.
And keep the toes pointed.
If you had to walk out in a fight in the UFC, what song would it be?
Oh, what's your walkout?
So I've had 4 cage grappling matches, so not full MMA, but down in Tassie, and I actually emceed those shows as well, which is pretty fun. But the best one I've come out to, so first time I went out to Disturb down with the sickness.
Oh yeah.
A little bit cliche. My most favourite one was I walked out to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off.
What?
Was that the same comp that you competed in your pink Speedos?
Oh, I can neither confirm nor deny
Oh,
those allegations.
Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere. We should look it up.
But yes, and it only lasted 37 seconds, I think.
Uh-oh.
Wow, sounds like Dhiren Saturday night. Oh, chop that out.
What?
Chop that out.
I wasn't going to go there.
No more listener
Study
questions.
strength and endurance. Come on.
Nice. Miyamoto Musashi quote of the week.
So we've
We've asked Professor Sensei Coach Grant, what do jiu-jitsu coaches like being called? Some sensei, some professor.
Dude, so many love
Some
professor.
coach.
And it's not, it's professor only because it means teacher in Portuguese. I like being called Grant.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Coach Grant, it is.
No, but even coach.
Yes, yes, sensei.
Yeah. Mercy has no place in this dojo.
Even when I'm texting Coach Grant, I'll always write Coach Grant.
Because
Always
I know
coach.
it triggers me.
Oh,
Yeah.
it doesn't trigger you. All right, Musashi quote of the week.
Yeah,
What have you got?
Hang on, what do we got? We've got, so there's a whole bunch of good ones. And I thought that this one was really cool for now.
Yep.
Is the true science of martial arts means practicing them in such a way that they'll be useful at any time, and to teach them in such a way that they will be useful in all things.
Very applicable to today's topic of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, staying calm in the eye of the storm, like we said.
And practicing them so that you can apply them in all things, in different areas of your life as well.
We talked about, applying not just the physical part of it, but the mental part of it to different parts of your life. The whole point of a lot of martial arts is to not use them.
Exactly. And that was the other one I was looking at.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, good
Sure.
good quote.
Yeah, it is a good quote. And you can sort of, jiu-jitsu does relate to a lot of things in your life. And I know we've sort of touched on this before, but jiu-jitsu can be a very sort of systematic sort of sport. You go from one position to you've got your game. You know where you want to end up, and there's various steps that you need to take to get there. And I think that has helped me outside jiu-jitsu as well. I know what I need to do with work. I know what the end goal is. Okay, what are all the different steps that I need to take to get to that end goal? Because you can't just jump from that first thing straight to the end goal. And that's the same with anything in life, really. So, yeah, that's what it means to me. It's a
process.
Good quote. Good quote.
Trust the process.
If you wanted to submit a listener question, you can do so via the email address podcast@musashi.com, or you can leave a review or ask a question on YouTube. And also you can on Apple iTunes leave a review. Anyone that leaves a review, we'll flick you out a free T-shirt. Hal is mouthing something to me. What have we forgotten?
Oh, the famous
how
athlete
could
quote.
we
How could we forget about the game?
I know. Okay, Hal, you got a famous athlete quote for us, and we have to guess who said it.
I'll give you a hint. You might see him tonight if you're watching The Last Dance.
Okay.
Oh,
This quote says, "Unlike tax, you're gonna pay one way or another."
did you try to do it in his accent then?
No, that would be very.
I'm like, what is it? I'm like tax.
Unlike tax, you're gonna pay one way or another.
I'm like Tex. You got to pay one way or another.
I got a fair idea, but
I think I know.
let's let Grant
Well,
guess.
do you reckon it's the obvious answer?
Well, I don't know.
See, I think it's
It might be.
Well, who's the obvious answer in your head?
Yeah.
the obvious answer is Jordan.
Ooh.
Jordan quote.
Okay, so
I'm thinking.
that sounds like one of his opponents. That to me sounds like something Reggie Miller would say.
I think it's the worm.
The worm?
Dennis Rodman.
I think it's Rodman as well.
Nope.
Oh,
Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, okay.
there we go.
Yeah.
Makes sense. We were just watching some old footage of Shaquille O'Neal in a bit of an altercation. We were watching, before we started the podcast, we were actually watching NBA fights.
Yeah.
Watch
So
the Malice at the Palace.
it seemed appropriate for today's topic of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But look, I just want to say thank you very much for coming all the way down here to do the podcast. It's been enlightening. Hopefully all the listeners have learnt something about jiu-jitsu. If you are thinking of starting jiu-jitsu, there's academies everywhere first place to start is
Iconic Jiu-Jitsu.
Iconic Jiu-Jitsu if you're on
move
the
to the
Central
Central
Coast.
Coast.
Any academies affiliated with sort of Gracie are safe bets. But get in there, learn something, get your family involved, and it's going to change your life. And I know that sounds very cult-like, but it's an awesome sport that's taught me a lot, and it definitely applies to other sports. It might not be your sole sport, but if you're a footy player, it's definitely going to help your footy, that's for sure. So get in there, give it a go. Any last words of wisdom before we sign off?
I think that's about it. We said a little bit earlier, didn't we?
We
the
did.
best time to start something's 10 years ago. Second best time's now. You can't start it now, but when you can get back out there and do something, you might miss out on your season of sport. Get out there, find some jiu-jitsu.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I guess you know the history and the story of jiu-jitsu. You know what it's all about. So no excuses. Get into it.
Yeah.
Nice. Look, stay safe, be kind to each other, reach out to a friend, family member, give them a call in these uncertain times. Touch base with people you don't normally speak to. Keep your sanity, but also remain close as a community. Any words of wisdom, Hal?
Nothing from there.
Beautiful. Signing out. Thanks. Next episode, I think we'll be touching on game day nutrition. So nutrition on the day of your chosen sport. Should be interesting.
Should be good.
Beautiful. Signing out. See you next time.
Musashi out.